Hey gang, I am Joe Edelman and welcome to the late edition of The Last Frame Live. Tonight, part 2, portraits on location, specifically outdoor portraits, and we're going to talk more about backgrounds, lighting, and I promised you some prep tips. I do have a few quick updates, some photo news items, and I promise, of course, to do a quick Q&A before we wrap up. So go ahead, start typing, put those questions in there, and I'll do my best to answer all of your questions before we finish. You know the drill by now. If you're watching live, please leave me a little note in the chat. Let me know who you are and where you're watching from. Already, let's see, I know I got Humberto here in Israel. I got Marquis down in Greensboro, North Carolina. Jim in Dennisville, Maine. I got Lynn in New York. We got people from all over the place. And if you're watching the replay, hey, no worries. I know there's going to be a lot of people that couldn't be here tonight because it's really late. Leave me a comment below the video. Let me know you made it and you checked it out. That way I know you were here, right? All of you are part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who I really sincerely appreciate for tuning in to The Last Frame Live every week. And for that, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. And of course, it would help a whole lot more people find out about The Last Frame. If you could do me a solid and hit that thumbs up below the video, the more thumbs up, honestly, that's how it works. The more YouTube will recommend the show to other photographers. And of course, while you're down there, feel free, go ahead and hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now, or you can share the link that I just put in the chat, lastframe.live. Facebook, Twitter, they're the quickest way to go ahead and get the word out. And remember also to share this show with your photography clubs, meetup groups, all that kind of stuff, right? So tonight's announcements, let's go ahead and hit those really quick. I don't have a lot for you, so the good part is we're gonna get into this pretty quickly. It would help if I had the right tab up here, wouldn't it? Man, I am all over the place tonight, gang, and I'm really sorry. So here, let me get it up here. ClickCon.us. I've been telling you the last couple weeks. I'm going to tell you for a couple more, okay? I'm going to be presenting at ClickCon. It's June 21st through the 23rd in Chicago. I won't give you all the detailed breakdown tonight. I've given it to you the last couple weeks. I'll share it again next week. I am going and putting the URL and the discount code in the chat window for you there. It's also in the description below the video. You can get 15% off. I don't make any money on that. That's just to give you a discount to be able to get there and save a couple bucks along the way. Also, I want to let you guys know about something new and potentially really crazy that I'm doing. You all know what a Facebook group is, and a lot of you are members of my Facebook group. But you also know that I was banned from Facebook last year in a really insanely stressful 2 weeks before I got it back. And since then, you know, I learned some lessons, right? So I'm not leaving Facebook. I'm not giving up on the Facebook group, but I have started my own learning community. And here's the thing that I promise you, it's different, and it's different than anything else that's out there. The name of the community is Tog Knowledge. So it's the Tog Knowledge Learning Community. It works similar to a Facebook, and I'm not going to give you the whole walk through tonight, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link with you in the chat. For those of you that are watching the replay, I'll make sure that it is in the description below the video. It's not there right now if you're here live, but I'll put it there. I would love to have you join. In fact, you know what? Let me stick that in there one more time so that there is a break before that HTTPS, or some of you are going to click on that and you're not going to be able to get there properly. I'm very sorry. So let's stick that in there. There. Now you're going to have a clean link to be able to get to it, right? Go ahead and sign up. It's free to join. I will tell you that moving forward, my mentoring program is going to be based in the Tog Knowledge community also. It's going to be a lot of really cool learning opportunities, including tomorrow night. We're going to have a virtual town meeting tomorrow night in the community via Zoom. And the cool part is we all get to meet kind of face to face. We get to talk, get to chat, get to know each other a little bit. And I promise there will be some learning, right? So check it out. It's different. It's just getting started. So this is your opportunity to get in there before things fill up. There's no cost. You don't have to spend any money. So I don't know what you got to lose, right? Check it out. All right. Also in photo news this week, who cares? let's talk about portraits on location, shall we? Right. That's what we're going to do. So I am going to get rid of my browser there. The reason why we're late tonight, I figured I'd share. So I'm going to say the 4 letters that I really hate when people say, but it's true because I just downloaded these. This is my excuse for why the last frame is happening 3 hours late. My grandson's first baseball game of the season was postponed because of rain last Saturday, and they held it tonight. I can't miss the first game of the season. So I just grabbed a couple frames. I have not processed them yet. So yeah, color's a little flat, but there they are. Those are my action shots for the night. That's why I made you all stay up late. I'll own it. Okay? All right. So let me get back to my desktop. Let me grab the images that we are working with. So back to the conversation about outdoor portraits. First thing I want to say is I want to apologize to those of you that watched last week. And you know why? I think you know I take my educational efforts very seriously. And this is a topic with a lot to talk about. I went back through last week's live stream. And you know what, man? I was all over the place last week. So I'm sorry for that. I work very hard to try and keep things cohesive and to make things more understanding. And while I got a lot of compliments about last week, and a lot of people said they picked up a lot of stuff, I was all over the place. So I want to hit on just a couple of points from last week as we get into this week, and I'm going to try and slow down a little bit. And you know what? If we have to do a third week, we'll do a third week, because this is an important topic. Here's the thing I want to impress on you first and foremost about shooting outdoor portraits. And get used to it. The 2 words that I am going to start with are 2 words that you are going to hear me say probably beyond 2022. But for this year, these 2 words are going to be my mantra, my personal mantra, and they are going to be the mantra that I am going to impress most upon all of you that are listening to me. The 2 words, be different, do different. Don't follow the crowd. Don't do trends. Don't do what everybody else does because it's boring. Look, here's the simple reality. And gang, this applies to your photography. It applies to your marketing if you're trying to make money. Don't do what everybody else does because you just make it that much harder for people to be impressed with your photography, to care about your photography, and certainly for your marketing, you make it that much harder to stand out. So still, people love to get out there with their 600-watt second strobes and overpower the sun at noon. They want to be lazy. They want to go out and they don't want to have to worry about the backgrounds. They don't want to have to worry about whether the light is right. So essentially what they do is they take studio lighting outside. Now it's interesting because there's this general myth among new photographers that studio lighting is really hard. It scares me. Like, I don't know. It's easier to take pictures than natural light. Let's set the record straight. That could not be more false. Studio lighting is 10 times easier than natural light. And that is a fact. And there's a real simple reason why. Number one, actually several reasons why. But number one on that list, in the studio, you're God. You put the light where you want it, as high as you want it, when you want it, you move it, you change it, you set the power, you control everything. And you can do amazing lighting with one light in the studio, which is the indoor equivalent of having the sun outside, one light, except you're God. Outdoors, you can't control Mother Nature. She doesn't cooperate. She won't take requests. And if you are going to master natural light, you have got to develop your skill set. Forget the camera for a minute. You've got to develop your skill set within your brain to be able to see, to be able to understand what elements outside are going to create good light and what elements will create bad lights. And we're going to talk a little bit about those as we go through these pictures tonight, right? So natural light is not easier. It's simply not. And that's why I'm trying to point out to you, that's why so many photographers love this trend of let's take a big parabolic umbrella and a long pole and take 3 other people, one with a video camera to videotape me so I look cool, and the other one with the pole and the parabolic umbrella and the 600-watt strobe. That's the big guy. He needs to have the muscles. He's going to hold that strobe, and I'm just basically going to turn Mother Nature off, and I'm going to create a studio wherever I go. And you know what? It's not that that's a horrible idea by itself. It works. What's it do? It gives you more control. But it's a horrible idea in the sense that everybody's doing it. So if you want to make money, honestly, even if you just want likes, and by the way, I don't care if you want likes, just be proud of yourself. If you want likes, if you just want to share pictures and get likes to have people say, hey, I love what you do. Cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's what you want, then don't do what everybody else does. Do different. That's the key. So, we're working outdoors. Couple of things. Number one, we've already established you've got to work a lot harder outdoors. That's what turns a lot of people off right away. You've got to work a lot harder to find good light. It takes practice to get good at that, right? Let me switch this for a second. Also, outdoors. You've got to contend with Mother Nature. Wind does not work well with a girl's hair. Hot humidity, like summertime here in Pennsylvania. By the time we get to July and August, you take a model outside on a nice sunny day, she's just going to be like dripping within, 10 minutes of being outside. So you also have to factor in when you're going to go outside, time of day, where's the light going to be? Where do you want to shoot? If you've got a background in mind, well, where is the light in relationship to that background? How hot is it going to be? Is it going to be a windy day? So you put all these things together. If you're trying to create great images, it is actually a ton harder to shoot outside on location. Because I want you to notice as I show you my images tonight, and I showed you a bunch of them last week, but as we go through them, I don't have a whole lot of images with messy hair because the wind's blowing and it's in front of the girl's face or half of it's on her cheek. No. And I didn't do hours and hours and hours of retouching to fix the hair. And I didn't send it outsource it to have somebody fix the hair. No. I worked very carefully, number one, to make sure that I was shooting either on days when I didn't have a lot of wind or in locations where I didn't have a lot of wind. In other words, I was blocked from the wind. Or what's one of the easiest solution with wind, make sure the model's facing into the wind, and that way the hair is not going to blow in her face. Now, that can cause a conflict with, well, is that the best light, though? But that's one way to solve that problem. So, as I indicated to you last week, my favorite way to shoot outdoors on bright sunny days is absolutely hands down to put my subject in the shade. But I still need that bright sunlight to really make the light look great. So I want to show you actually a clip here. This is from the video that I shared with you last week. It is still linked in the description below this week's video. Actually, here, I should show you these few images first. I want to grab this one, this one, this one, and this one. So you can tell these are all taken essentially at the same location. 2 different days, 2 different models. Super soft, even light. Both of these images are taken on super bright, sunny days. So let me show you the breakdown of how the lighting worked for this shot. I'm just going to play a piece of the video without audio so that I can show you. So I want you to look in this dark space over here. This is the wall where the models are standing. But this is, this little clip that you're seeing here is on the day that I took the shot of the young lady in the red dress. So this is the exact day that picture was taken, right? So we're going to come back to that. Let me get that up here. There we go. Now, so just to give you a sense, high noon, you can see the sun is practically straight up, okay? This is taken the middle of the day. It's not taken early in the morning I hate getting up early. It's not taken late in the day. It's just not a convenient time for me. So we're talking crazy harsh light. But notice from the side of the building, I've got about 10 feet of shade here, right? So the way that I'm doing this shot is I'm going to turn the camera to the other end. Now I've gone into the shade. And right now, this camera view is looking right back. When I did that last video clip that you saw, the video camera was right here where that patch of grass is back there, and it was looking towards where we're at now. So you see what happens, and this is just an automatic exposure on video. When I go into the shade, look how much the light softens up, because now I'm exposing for the shade, right? So that's the difference. And there you can see the model standing in the ivy, in the shade, and I am simply exposing for the shadows. Super, super simple. One of the other benefits, I'm going to blow this up here. Look at what you get in terms of her eyes. Whoops. Let me go back to there. Okay, you get these really kind of nice, kind of soft catch lights. They're not pinpoint catch lights, but look at how much color I get in the eyes. No fancy post-production done to her eyes. I didn't have to run any fancy actions, any of that kind of stuff. That's pretty much as is. Super simple. Now, a couple of things. One of the questions that some of you might be asking about this type of a lighting situation is, and you could see this image, by the way, is processed with a slight amount of extra yellow to it. This is about as close as Joe gets to doing like an Instagram filter kind of thing, okay? So this would be a better representation of the color without the yellow added in, right? So one of the questions or things that you should be thinking about here is, well, what do you do about color balance and white balance and that kind of stuff in a situation like this? So I'm going to give you two completely different answers because it's important that you understand the two options, right? I will tell you one thing that I don't do before I tell you the two answers. The one thing that I don't do is use the white balance setting for shade. Now, I have not shot with every digital camera on the market today. I have shot with Nikon DSLRs, not mirrorless. I have shot Sony mirrorless both like 5 or 6 years ago and now also, today with the A7R4. And I have shot Olympus, everything from the EM1 Mark II up to the EM1 Mark III, the EM5, the EM10, etc. I haven't shot the OM1 yet. The shade setting for white balance in all of them adds way too much red to the scene. Now, we're shooting raw, so you can correct it in post, but why correct it if you don't have to, right? So I never use the shade setting. I don't use the cloudy settings. I never use the flash setting for white balance, ever. I can tell you in all sincerity, for these pictures that I showed you, the ones of this young lady in this outfit and the one of the young lady in the red dress, I simply used auto white balance. That's the first option. Just because I used auto white balance doesn't make it the perfect answer. So please understand that anytime you are going to use auto white balance, there is the possibility that the camera will be fooled. The baseball pictures that I showed you, if you were paying close attention, they were a little blue. The game started at 5 p.m., ended just after 7. It was kind of sunny when the game started, but then it got overcast. So there was a lot of blue in the sky because it was getting late in the day. It was overcast. There was a lot of blue. And the camera really leaned towards blue on the white balance. Now, the good part is, yes, I will be able to fix it very easily. But the fact is, the camera was fooled. Now, you might ask, well, Joe, if you knew that when you were shooting, why didn't you fix it while you were shooting? Get it right in camera, right? The reason I didn't fix it while I was shooting, and it's not an excuse, it's so that you understand, during the game, I knew that white balance was going to keep changing because it's getting darker and darker and darker, and it's getting more overcast. So the white balance is constantly changing. So I had the choice. Like, I could keep monitoring it and then would have to keep changing my white balance through the whole game, or understand, yes, leave it on auto and then go ahead and correct in post, period. So it just made more sense. Instead of fighting it during the game, in that situation, since I know it's happening, I'm going to leave it on auto and I'm going to fix it. Everything's shot on raw. It'll be really easy to fix, right? But for situations like this, I want to try and get it in the camera, because as I'm doing this kind of stuff, the white balance isn't changing. I'm also not shooting this portrait for like 2 hours like I was a baseball game, right? So, you know, this was like 20 minutes in that spot. Yeah, 20 minutes, even though like it would seem like, well, what would take you 20 minutes? Remember, work your shot. I always try lots of different things. I mix it up a little bit. I'll try different poses, different compositions, waist up, even closer, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if I'm going to go there and I'm going to set up to take a picture, even without lights, I'm going to spend at least 20 to 30 minutes working on that picture. Absolutely, right? So the other option would be to go ahead and set your white balance by Kelvin. I'm not a big fan of doing that when I'm working outside in natural light, because I'm just eyeballing it, unless you've got a Kelvin meter, and you don't need to go by a Kelvin meter. And I guess if I were to add a third option, you could, in theory, use a gray card. I never use gray cards in situations like this, for one simple reason. It's not wrong if you do it. I will say, those of you that are doing that, if you're doing it, you probably are like an engineer or an analytical type person. And I'm not making fun. I'm just saying, because that's the way your mind works. That's okay. Remember that pictures like this, all of these pictures that I'm showing you tonight, are subjective. So there is no such thing as perfect color, right? You can go like I did, you know, in the one that I showed you up here. You can go a little yellow. Now, I did this in post, but you can go a little yellow, make it a little bit warmer, and I like the feel. I don't do that very often, but I like it in this shot. Cool. Some people may hate it. You know what? That's okay too. Right? So the concept of perfect white balance doesn't really exist, or I should say, it's not a need for pictures like this, right? So anyway, that was basically how, you know, that scenario was done with this, the side kind of this barn. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you here, and actually this is a similar setup where I've got the girl here. I'll let this play. I've got the girl posing in the shade on the side of a building. You see, it's a bright sunny day outside, right? So, you know, I'm just working with her looking out towards the sunlight. Now, I want you to notice some things also about colors, right? She had this colored dress. This building, by the way, that she's posing in front of, it's a pump house on a sewage treatment plant. Not very sexy, is it, right? So the whole point is, a lot of times when photographers, especially new photographers, beginner photographers, go out on location when the idea like, oh, I want to take pictures here, the picture winds up becoming more about here than it does the subject. You'll notice in all of these pictures that I'm showing you, for me, when I'm going out on location, I'm choosing the location for its color scheme or maybe its texture, but I am not letting the location become the focus of the image. I'm photographing a girl, so the girl is the focus. Absolutely, right? So I'm using the location even to give a sense of it being at a location, but I don't need to see all of the detail of that location, right? So we'll continue on here a little bit more. This is this little park that I talk about all the time. And you know, most of you have something kind of like this near you. And by the way, when I say kind of like this, you might live in the middle of a city. So the kind of like this is a cluster of tall buildings, right? So this is like a little 2-acre patch of really dense trees. So it's like a little tiny mini forest, tiny 2-acre spot. It's actually, it's a local community park, right? But I love in the summertime to do portraits in this spot. One of the reasons I like to do this spot, if it's a slightly breezy day, I can go deeper into this little 2-acre spot and the trees knock down a lot of the wind. Now, if it's really windy, it's not going to matter, right? But if it's just a little breezy, the further in I go, the less breeze there is. help solve some problems, right? But I want you to notice, like, how tall the trees are before I get, the canopy, which blocks the light, right? So when I go here, and here it is, kind of walking into this little park, right? You get little bits of sunlight popping through the trees. So you got a lot of shade, you got a little bit of sunlight, okay? So, the cool part of this is you look through here, there's all different kinds of light. There's bright sunlight, there's, kind of really bright shade, there's really soft shade, and there's one bad thing. The deeper in you go, like where we are right now, there's a lot of green and yellow light. So it doesn't mean you don't shoot there. It just means you need to pay attention to that, or it's going to show up in your pictures. So, just to give you some examples of some images that are taken in that spot, okay, or in that little park. Here's a shot that's done in that little park. And you can see how in the background I left that greenish yellow tint go, okay? Similarly, little Frisbee picture, right, in that little park, okay? This is done, clearly she's right on the edge of it, on a walking path. So things are a little bit brighter. This is in that same spot where I went ahead and really let the light blow out in the background. So keep in mind, in a picture like this, to your eyes, when you're standing in front of her, she's pretty much a silhouette. That's how bright it is behind her. So notice what I did for this picture. I picked a spot that didn't have a lot of dense trees behind me. I picked a spot that had some trees, but mostly had really bright light coming. And then I exposed for her face. And that creates that dreamy feeling. And look, let me be clear now. There are some of you that will look at this picture and say, I don't like the background blown out like that. If you can say to yourself honestly that you don't like it, then that's cool if you don't like it. If somebody told you you're not allowed to have the background blown out, go tell that person they're an idiot for telling you that. You can quote me. There's no rule that says you can't have it blown out. It is an effect, right? It's not for everybody. But for me, it's very dreamy. We got the low-cut top. She's not wearing a bra, all that kind of stuff. So it's very sexy, right? I like that. Other shots done in that same little park. Stuff here. Now, you can tell just from the lighting in the background, this one was in that same spot, but it was on an overcast day. So the lighting's kind of more even across the board, period. Let's see. I think I have a couple others here that were done. Yeah, so this is one where notice how I almost have this looking like it's studio lighting. It's clearly outside for real. So what's the trick to that? The trick to that is, okay, since I have more definition in the lighting here, right? Notice, more definitions. No heavy shadows, but there's more definition. We get fall off that looks like we're in a studio. How did we do that? It's easy. So I want you to think about this. Let me go back to the video here. And I want to go back to the clip where I showed you the outside edge of the park, right? The closer you are to the edge of the park with the model, and by the way, in all these, the model is looking out, right? Because the light is coming down under the canopy of the trees. That's what's lighting her, okay? Even in the one that was backlit, there's still some light coming in, from the other side under the canopy of the trees. That's what's giving me a little bit of light on her. It's just that the light behind her is much brighter. But in the shot, the portrait that I just showed you, in fact, here, let me put that up above my head here. This shot, okay, I've got the model very close, probably just like 2 trees in the path. So the light is much brighter, but there's still no direct light hitting her. She is still in the shade of the trees, but she's much closer to the bright light outside the trees. And then shot like this, I'm a little further in. Shot like this, I'm way into the middle. Okay? In fact, I believe this is the next one up in that video clip, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go back to where we were. Yeah, so here, these are all kind of examples from there. Whoops. I thought I showed you the exact location. I didn't. I apologize. But it basically, that stump that she's on, this is the stump right down in the bottom of the corner of the frame. So you can see just how far in the woods we are at this point. I mean, it's not like it's, oh my God, miles. We're talking, probably 30 yards. But it's far enough in that it's really kind of, giving me that softer diffuse light. In all of these images, hopefully you're noticing, I am using depth of field to my advantage to soften the background. We can tell they're trees without the trees being in focus, right? So, and by the way, I don't shoot at, 1.8 and 1.4 and all that kind of stuff. So like, this image here, let's just go ahead and pull up the EXIF data on this. And this is an older image. So this was shot with a Nikon D700. It's shot with a 70 to 200 millimeter 2.8 lens. It was at about 116 millimeter and it was shot at 2.8. And oh my God, I raised the ISO. I raised the ISO to 320. I have my shutter speed at 1/200th of a second. Now, do be careful in situations like this with your shutter speed, especially if you're using longer lenses like the 70 to 200. It's all a matter of how steady are you, and it's all a matter of how much movement is in the shot. So as much as this looks like it has a ton of movement, if you've ever photographed anybody that does karate, you know that this is actually a pose. So she's not moving. It's a balanced pose. She's holding the pose. There's no movement. So the only thing I had to worry about with regards to shutter speed is I'm using a big, long, heavy lens on a fairly heavy camera. Am I personally capable of holding everything steady at that shutter speed? And I am. I was able to comfortably hold the Nikon 70 to 200 f2.8 on the full frame DSLRs at a 1/125th of a second. Now, again, that's not accounting for subject motion. So that's just if it's me and the camera, I could keep it steady comfortably at that range. A good rule of thumb, notice rule of thumb, it's not a rule. Okay, a rule of thumb is when you're hand holding your camera, try to keep your shutter speed at a number that is bigger than the focal length of your lens. If it's a zoom, bigger than the maximum focal length of your lens. So if you are using an 85 millimeter lens, and by the way, this is natural light shooting, no strobes involved. If you're using an 85 millimeter lens and you're going to hand hold, try to use a shutter speed of an 80th or 100th of a second. Try not to shoot at a 60th, a 50th, or a 30th. Is that possible to do? Of course it's possible to do, but you increase the risk of camera motion from you, the photographer, and certainly if there is any motion in your subject, well, then there's a good likelihood that you are actually going to magnify that motion and have subject blur, which you don't want, right? So when you're thinking about shutter speeds in general, again, we're leaving studio strobes out of the conversation right now. When you think about shutter speeds in general, there's two elements to deciding what is a good shutter speed. One is a shutter speed that is fast enough to stop any action in your picture. The other is a shutter speed that is fast enough to ensure that you, the photographer, are not going to introduce any camera motion, right? So consider both options before you start shooting and settle in on that. And that's why, as you've heard me talk about a lot in the last year, don't be afraid to raise your ISO. Your cameras can handle it. A lot of the images that I showed you from baseball tonight, and obviously we didn't examine them closely, but I was shooting at 1200 ISO, 1600 ISO, and basically since, as I explained with the white balance, the lighting was changing all night long. When I shoot his baseball games like that, I work on auto ISO. So think about that process. It's kids' sports, so I need to stop the action. So I want a fast shutter speed. I don't want a lot of depth of field because it's not like I'm shooting in a Major League Baseball stadium, so some of the angles, the backgrounds are kind of crappy. So I want the backgrounds to be as soft as possible. So tonight I was working with two camera bodies. One was the 300 f4, Olympus cameras tonight, 300 f4 and the 12 to 100 f4. So both cameras were set at f4. I was shooting at shutter speeds that were generally at around a thousandth of a second or a little bit higher when I was shooting the batting shots, right? And then I would let the camera do auto ISO, and I would adjust that. In other words, if I noticed it was a little too light or a little too dark, I would adjust it on the fly using the exposure compensation dial. So it's really easy. Instead of having to play around with the shutter speed and aperture the whole time, set those based on, I want shallow depth of field, I need to stop action, done. And now I can forget about them. Let the camera manage the ISO, but that doesn't mean it's always going to give me the perfect exposure because it's auto. So that's why you ride the exposure compensation. If it's a little bright, you dial it down. If it's a little hot, or a little dark, excuse me, you brighten it up a little bit, and you do it that way. So, similar in these situations, but all of these shots, even this one here, let's go ahead. We'll grab the file info. And this is an older shot also. So this is Nikon D700 shot with the 85 millimeter. That's at f3.5. So it's not 1.8. So the best part about shooting at f3.5, both eyes are in focus. Her nose is in focus. Her mouth is in focus. The back of her hair, further away you get, is softer, right? But the important details are in focus. Also, ISO 320, okay? So, I point this stuff out because it's important that you understand the whole f1.8 to get really soft backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. It's not that it's a horrible idea, but it's a really horrible idea if you're not going to pay really close attention to the depth of field on your subject, okay? Just to give you another example. And this is a day where I was in a different location. This was not my normal little park that I showed you. This was a different park, and there was not a whole lot of shade. Like, this tree that she's in is not that big, so I literally kind of put her in the tree and practically had her hug the branch, okay, so that I get shade. So this goes way back. This is a Nikon D200, so this was APS-C format, right? Shooting with, I believe this had the 70-200 on it, so it's 160 millimeter focal length, which is 247, 35 millimeter, for the APS-C. But here I went all the way to ISO 640. Shot it at 1/125th of a second at 3.5. ISO 640 back in 2007. That's pretty gutsy. Just saying, right? So don't be afraid to raise. And by the way, none of the images where you see me raising my ISO, I don't do any noise reduction software. I've never used noise reduction software in my entire life. Never. Other than to try it for 5 minutes and see what it does. I don't use noise reduction software, period. Okay. Similar scenario, same park, but this is in the fall. So I'm starting to lose some of the trees at that point, right? But again, there's still just enough covering. This is all natural light. And the neat part of it is, because of the canopy concept, you can see the lighting just by, walk in 10 feet, have your model turn around and look back where you came from and look at the light. Then have your model walk another 10 feet in, turn around, look at the light. And what I'm encouraging you all to do is that next time you go out with your cameras and a subject and you want to kind of get a feel for this, find a spot where you've got a bunch of trees like that, where you've got some depth in the trees. And again, do a little bit of practice. It'll take you 10 minutes to do this. But literally, have the model walk 5 feet into the shade. Wherever the shade starts, have her walk 5 feet in and turn around, look back at you, and take a nice headshot of her. Right? Then have her walk another 10 feet, turn around, take a nice headshot. You're going to keep walking too, right? Take another headshot of her. Have her walk another 10 feet, turn around, take another headshot of her. Have her walk another 10 feet, turn around, take a headshot of her. You will be blown away how much the light changes every 10 feet. And it's not about what's better. It's simply called they're all different. You're going to get different kinds of lighting each step of the way. Another example I want to point out to you here, I pointed out before about the green dress on the green wall. And I am jumping around a little bit now. I apologize, but as it comes up, I want to keep bringing back the same themes. She had the beige color pants, And this is part of why I went outside. It was in the fall. You can see there's leaves on the ground. It was in the fall, but it was warm enough to go outside without the model freezing to death, right? She had the beige color pants and the blue top. So I knew that by doing this, number one, her skin tone, the beige pants, the browns and the yellows with a little bit of green in the background was going to make that blue really pop. And it creates a gorgeous color scheme. Okay? So it's a simple picture, nothing super fancy. It was a picture that was done for her modeling portfolio. I will tell you right now, I'm going to point out a major flaw. It drives me nuts that the sweater is folded up right there. That's on me. I missed it. We can't all be perfect all the time. Fortunately, this picture actually worked out great for this young lady's modeling portfolio. She's got a ton of work. She's done really well. Most people aren't going to notice that, but as photographers, we should be noticing that. Okay? Fortunately, it doesn't ruin the picture, but it's sloppy, right? So if you didn't notice it while we were talking about that picture, I purposely left the picture on the screen for a while. You should have noticed it, right? It's important. Details matter, okay? Another similar shot, running shot in the same spot. This was on an overcast day in that same little patch of woods. So she's actually right by the edge of the woods. Like right behind me, it literally is my car. I'm like 5 feet from my car in the which is in the parking lot. Okay. And she's like right out at the edge because I needed to keep a decent amount of light on her. And nice soft background. Again, I don't shoot at, crazy wide open settings. ISO 400, f2.8, and 1/200th of a second. This is with a Nikon D700 that I had the 70 to 200 millimeter lens on. Okay. So also notice, what are my background colors? My background colors are the browns, the greens. Brown has orange in it. So it works out great as a way to make her really jump out of the frame. So here I am. I've got a girl in the forest. I don't have any trees growing out of the back of her head. Yeah, there's a tree here, but it's not growing out of her, right? I don't have all kinds of distractions. I don't have all the trees sharp. Even, these little highlights that are on the ground, they're not sharp enough that we can see. Is it trash? What is that? We can't tell. It doesn't get in the way of the picture. So, really with, most of these shots, obviously here I've let the background completely blow out. Here, I picked a spot where I had, some color and some trees far enough in the background, but again, let them go super soft. With the building, I talked about this one last week. This was a picture for the same young lady's modeling portfolio. The idea was to make her look like a college student, right? So we wanted a building that looked like a college building, and it actually is a college building, but you can't see that much detail in the building. It's just enough of a building to create the scene, the concept, the mood, and that's it. Similarly, we go up here, that one that I showed you before. Notice with the blurry trees, since there are a lot of them, I found a spot to get her in the middle of trees so that I didn't have a tree growing out of her head or branches coming out at eye level, right? Clean backgrounds. Again, simple backgrounds, all earth tones. Now, some of you may have heard me in some of my talks, especially my portrait talks, when I talk about prepping a model. The question comes up all the time, and it's usually the models that will ask, or a portrait subject will ask me, like, hey, Joe, what's the best color to wear, right? Because nobody wants a bad picture of themselves, right? So if they're at all insecure, even if they have a favorite color of their own, they're going to ask you the question, like, well, what's the best color to wear? The truth of the matter is there is no such thing as a bad color for a picture, unless you, the photographer, put the subject in front of a clashing background. But here's the big one, right? The way here, and this is exactly how I explain it. So you're the potential portrait subject or model. Don't worry about best color. You can wear whatever color you want. I certainly, if I'm going to shoot several outfits, I would like to see a range of colors. In other words, like if you always wear black or you always wear red, don't make everything black or red. Mix it up a little bit. But here's the thing about colors. We want the pictures to be about you. The outfits and the clothing and the colors, they are accents. So wear any color you want, but wear earth tones. So if you want to wear red, but don't wear fire engine red or cherry red. Wear burgundy or maroon. If you want to wear yellow, don't wear canary yellow. Wear like a mustard yellow. If you want to wear green, don't wear Kelly green. It's not St. Patrick's Day. Wear like a forest green. Same goes with blue. Don't wear sky blue or worse yet, royal blue. Wear like a navy blue or deep blue. You can never go wrong as a photographer with earth tones. Now, it still doesn't get you off the hook with making sure that you've got colors that complement it for your backgrounds, etc. But the best part of it is earth tones are never going to take away from your subject. It's not to say that you can never take a picture with bright primary colors. Look at my fashion portraits. I do lots of bright primary colors, but in those fashion portraits, the picture's not about the girl. It's about this kind of character that we're creating, right? In my portrait work, in my modeling portfolio work, in lifestyles images, which is a lot of what a lot of these are, I almost always go with more neutral and earthy tones. And by the way, that's not a Joe Edelman thing. I mean, why should you take my word for it? I'm some guy on YouTube, right? Start paying attention to the clothing that you see in advertisements. Now, I don't mean a fashion magazine, but I mean like the next time you see an ad, maybe for a resort where people could go and stay at, or, you know, for a cool shopping mall to go shop at, and they're advertising the mall. Look at the colors that people wear. I'm not saying that you'll never see primary colors, but overwhelmingly, the colors that you will see people wear in like TV commercials and ads are going to be earthy tones. Because that ad or that commercial, it's about a product or a service or a place. They generally, unless that person is like a character and the color makes sense, they're generally not going to dress the person in a way that the clothing is going to steal attention from whatever the messaging is in the shot. Right? So let me go back through a couple more here. Even like, so a running shot, this young lady had ran in the New York City Marathon. We were shooting a modeling portfolio for her. So she brought, her shirt, and she had her marathon thing, and it's this bright neon green, which is a challenging color. So I took her out, put her in a shady spot, found a tree that had a lot of green and yellow in it, and I was able to kind of neutralize the shirt a little bit, okay? Again, here, her hair color, skin color, the trees, the backgrounds, the color that stands out is kind of the gray and the white. You saw me use the blues before. I used them in the fall for the other picture. Here, let me go back and grab that one. Here's same spot, similar scenario, okay? Just different time of year. So I've got a different color scheme, but the yellows work with the blue, as do the greens work with the blue, right? So, all of those you can put together. This was a picture that I did literally just down on the street in New Orleans. Photographed this model. We picked a shady street. We were in the French Quarter and just walking down the street looking for kind of the right building to work with. This building was perfect because it had the beige colors. The green is a nice accent color that kind of rounds out the color palette, but doesn't interfere. This is an older picture, so I'm not making excuses. I shot this one like in 2003, but to this day, and I could retouch it out if I needed to go back to the time, but the little hook on the shutter there drives me nuts, completely drives me insane. It's the kind of thing that, and again, this young lady, she used this picture in her modeling portfolio. Her agencies loved it. It worked out great for her. Everybody was happy. But as a photographer who really pays attention to detail, That's something, if I would have moved just 6 inches, I could have taken the same picture and I could have gotten rid of that. I should have noticed it. You have to teach yourself to notice these things, right? Okay, it's part of the process of what we do as photographers. Let's start with this one first. Again, similar scenario. This picture here is actually the backside of that barn that I showed you in the very beginning tonight, the one on the bright sunny day. So this was on a bright sunny day, but this was later in the afternoon. So the sun had moved around, right? So you can see that there's still sun out there, but I've got her in a little piece of shade and I'm shooting along the wall and purposely trying to get the different shades of green. There's some of the kind of teal green on the building. I've got the green behind her. She's wearing some grays and yellows and earth tones. So it gives me a color palette where everything kind of fits together and really makes my subject stand out. This was a shot that was done on micro four thirds. So even just to give you a sense of, aperture, etc. This one I did shoot at f1.2 on the micro four thirds. I wanted to make sure that I had nice shallow depth of field. But again, you'll notice I've also got her face straight to the camera so that I don't have like one eye in focus, one eye out of focus kind of scenario, right? I showed you this set of archways last week. In fact, here, just as a reminder for those of you that weren't here, let me find the arches. So that set of arches, and the bottom picture, by the way, that was done with flash. It's not an actual light, but I wanted to kind of show you guys the arches. And then I showed you how by standing at one end of the arches and having the model just walk through them, no flash, heavily backlit, and exposing for her, you get this gorgeous light. It's got nice depth on the face. You can see the arches in the background. So the picture that I just had up of Monet, let me go back to that. My apologies. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? There it is. Okay. This is her standing basically right behind. Let's see where their shot is. She's basically standing right behind where this model is, facing in the opposite direction. Okay. So she's closer to the end where the bright sunlight is. And I'm using, a little bit of the chaos that's in the background. It is a busy background, not an ideal situation for me, but it's one that works. I very purposely went ahead and used the window lines. These are big glass windows that run along the side of the building here. Use those as leading lines that lead in. Simple scenario like this. Notice how I have her head in the middle of the glass pane on the door so that I don't have the red coming up out of the top of her head at any point. All that kind of stuff is important to pay attention to so that you eliminate as many distractions as you can along the way, right? That same little park is on a cloudy day, shot with a wide angle lens. I picked a cloudy day because on a sunny day, as you're spinning around, you're going in and out of sun, in and out of sun, in and out of sun. So it's like good light, bad light, good light, bad light. And it's impossible. But shooting with a wide lens, since it's cloudy out, the light's good, 360 degrees around, shooting at a slow shutter speed. Obviously be safe if you do shots like this, meaning don't go too fast. Try and work at a slower shutter speed. Get your shots as quick as you can so you don't make your model sick or make yourself sick. But it's all about have some fun with it, right? If you have to work with a busy background like this brick wall, right? Try to pick a set of tonal ranges where the brick wall, even though it's very in focus and very sharp and very detailed, doesn't become a big distraction because she, the model, is the part that breaks the pattern, right? And stands out from the shot. So just to do a little kind of summary to finish up here. So we got 5 minutes left, right? And I didn't see any questions come in, so I'm going to take the 5 minutes and we'll get back to it next week. The whole thing with outdoor portraiture, and well, a couple of things, right? Number one, this is just like anything else in photography. If you're going to go get a client, and try it for the first time. Or if you're going to go get a model and think that you're going to make portfolio pictures and they're going to be amazing for the first time, you're setting yourself up to fail. You just are, right? Find somebody, and heck, you could drag your mannequin out. People might think that's a little odd. I've never done that one yet. I'll have to try that sometime. But the point is, go out in a situation like this if you've never done this stuff before and experiment a little bit, right? I mean, certainly there's nothing wrong with, getting a pretty girl and saying, hey, let's go shoot and doing it. But the thing that holds so many photographers back, so you just got to be honest with yourself. If this is you, and if it's you, it's okay. Just be honest with yourself. The thing that holds so many photographers back is they're afraid to try new things because they're afraid it won't turn out well, and then they're embarrassed in front of that person, right? So if that's the case, do your thing. So if you're that strobe person, drag the strobe out, do those strobe pictures, but then just say to the girl, it's like, hey, you know what? Before we leave here, I've got an idea. It's something I'd like to try. I've never done it before. Now, remember, at this point, you've already got some shots in the can, so to speak, right? You've done what you know how to do. Fine. Even though it's just like everybody else using Flash, you got your shots. So just say to her, it's like, you know what? I've had this thing I've been wanting to try for a long time. It's an experiment. May work, it may not work. But can we do a couple more? Would you mind? You've now just bought yourself permission to fumble. You've bought yourself permission to be able to get your nose down in the camera a little bit and putz around with your exposure and try things and tweak things and say, you know what? That's not quite what I'm looking for. Wait, let me try an adjustment. Let me go ahead and take another, shot, okay? Stop thinking that you have to put on a show for your subjects. Even to this day, when I'm shooting models, I literally have like verbal diarrhea. I'm talking nonstop about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Hey, this looks good. And the better that I know the model, the more that I'll joke. You've all probably heard me say, like, don't be the photographer that takes the test shot, looks at the preview and is like, oh, crap. That's not the way to build confidence with your subject, right? If you really know your subject well and you've worked with them and you know they're confident in you, well, then fine, do that. Do it for fun. I'll do that all the time for fun with a model that I know to kind of tease them, right? But if it's somebody I've never worked with before, no. I could be looking at the worst damn picture I've ever taken with the worst damn lighting I've ever created and have no idea what I'm going to do to fix it. They'll never know, right? So let's just be clear there, right? But by buying yourself permission, by being honest, hey, this now is an experiment. Then you can fumble more. Then you can experiment more. Then you could say, we're not quite there yet. Let's try a couple more, right? And keep working with it. But understand, just like anything else, practice is key. And number 2, try to plan your shots in advance. So download the apps like Sunseeker or PhotoPills or Photographer's Ephemeris so that you can understand before you go someplace what's going to be the best time of day to get the lighting that I want for the background that I want. Check the weather. And don't just check the weather in terms of what's the temperature going to be. Check the wind speed. I talk about my 2 dogs all the time. I walk my 2 dogs every day, especially in the wintertime in the morning. I ask that Amazon thing, starts with an A. I can't say it or it's going to activate. I ask it for the temperature. I do it while I'm in the shower. I ask it for the temperature and I ask it for the wind speed because especially in the wintertime, it might be a warm day like 32, 33 degrees here in Pennsylvania. But if there's a 15-mile-per-hour wind, it's going to feel like it's about 10 degrees. So it doesn't do me any good to just know the temperature. I need to know the wind speed. In the case of taking pictures outside, you want to know the wind speed. 1, because is it going to make it too cold? 2, is it going to make the model's hair a mess? Right? You can figure all that stuff out before you go out. So if you haven't done a lot of location portraiture, my challenge to you is try it. You got nothing to lose. And if you work at it, you could be the one in your area that's doing things that nobody else is doing. Because so many photographers follow these YouTubers who actually are not good at natural light photography. So they take all their strobe gear outside because that's easy and they can make themselves look good. And they just do the same damn thing over and over again. They overpower the sun, overpower the sun, overpower the sun. Okay, we'll do it at sunset, but we're still going to overpower the sun. That's boring. Be different. Do different. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great week. You know the drill. Go pick up those damn cameras and shoot something because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Take care.